Welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast, where you get to choose, change and take action to create a different today and a different future. These are my stories of choice, change and action, along with the phenomenal guests I have on here. From a really young age, I've always desired to create a change in the world. The planet has been a constant inspiration to me, and Access Consciousness has shown me the tools to know that anything is possible. And I keep choosing. What are you going to choose? Hi everyone, welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast. And if you're watching, then you can see me and you can see Mr. Brendon Watt. Thank you, Brendon, for coming on here at such short notice.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.
And if you're not watching, we are on YouTube now as well, so you can check that out. So this month we're talking about vulnerability, and I have been procrastinating doing I've actually been procrastinating doing this on relationship. I wanted to do a podcast on relationship and being vulnerable with it. And I was actually going to do it on my own. And it was funny. I was talking to everyone I work with this morning and I said, yesterday was not the day for me to do that. And I was like either really cranky or really feisty or just wanted to lie down and sleep. And I was like, not the energy of a podcast. So this morning I thought, who better to ask than Brendon Watt as my ex on doing a podcast on vulnerability in relationship. So if you don't know, Brendon Watt and I were in a relationship for 8 years. I think it's about 3 years that someone actually said the other day, and I was like, I don't know. I think it's 3 years that we've been split up, maybe more.
I'm not, but yeah.
I don't know. But the relationship has still continued in so many different ways. And I'd like to just sort of explore a little bit of that today, and also be talking about the 5 elements of intimacy that you really require to have with yourself before you can have a relationship with anyone else. And they are the 5 elements of intimacy are gratitude, trust, allowance, vulnerability, and honor. And Brendon, can you talk a little bit about that with how you see those tools working in being like for yourself and how that contributes to being in relationships, etc. And not just with the person that you're in a relationship with, like shagging everyone looks at, like having sex and copulation. I mean, with everyone.
Well, I mean, I've only really just started getting the sense for me of having a lot more of that stuff, those 5 things for myself. Like I was having a conversation with Gary and Dane the other day, and I've been through a lot of change in my life in the last 5 months. And one of the things that I realized was I was still treating myself the same way that I did in the past. I still had this judgment and unkindness in my world. And I was like, wow, I really haven't been choosing those things, the honor, the trust, the vulnerability, the gratitude and allowance with me. And I would be it with somebody else. You know, I would have that to the degree that I could with somebody else, but I wasn't really willing to get honest with myself and look at where I wasn't being it for me. And that, I think, that's a level of intimacy with yourself that a lot of people aren't willing to have. And when you get that, first of all, get the awareness of that, but then start asking for it. Like for me, I went, you know what, that's not going to create the life I want.
So can I explore that a little bit with you? Because you said, you know, what you have functioned from most of the time is judgment and unkindness with yourself.
Uh-huh.
So was that something that you were like, you grew easy for me to say. Is that something that you grew up with? Is it something that you watched around you, everyone else choosing that? Or did that just become this like automatic response system that it was judgment and unkindness to yourself? Because it's not uncommon. It's not like, it's like, oh, look, Brendon Watt, he's the weird one out judging himself. It's like, no, right. It's a commonality trait that most people pick up. But let's explore that. Like, where did that come from?
Well, I think for me, it was a combination of a lot of things, but like even with vulnerability, for me, vulnerability was like, I would be vulnerable with exposing, you know, vulnerability is having no walls or barriers to anything. It's total receiving. So what I would do was I'd be vulnerable with all the shit that was fucking not right with me, all the shit that was like, that I didn't like about myself, I would tell people about that quite openly. And I have talked about it, like even with my life and what I've been through recently with going through addiction. I've talked about that. So I had the vulnerability with that. But one thing I wasn't willing to look at with having total receiving was and is the brilliance of me, the gift that I am. That was something that, I'll talk about the shit. I'll talk about all my shit, but don't get me talking about what's actually beautiful about me, because that would be too much receiving. But so for that was a whole, like, I could give thousands of examples on that growing up, but for how many of us do we have that thing of, like, when you really get a sense of you and then somebody comes and slams you in the head and you're like, well, that didn't work. I'll give that up. And so we all do it. Well, most of us do it to some degree, but it's like even the trust as well. I would trust myself to screw up, but I wouldn't actually trust myself to succeed.
I mean, I happen to know a few stories about you, and
who told you?
What's that?
Who told you?
You. And one of the things that I keep...
Are they naughty?
Not the ones I'm about to tell. But I keep getting this image of you as a kid and the vulnerability that you did choose with yourself. And can you talk a little bit about that I love the story of when you taught yourself to fish. Yeah. And what was actually going on for you with that?
Well, I didn't, like, at a young age, I didn't have a filter to the world. I didn't have judgment. I hadn't learned about it. And I still, so even throughout my life learning about it, I never got it and didn't really pick that much of it up. I was always different like that. But as a kid, it's like, I didn't have any filters to anything. I was just like, what else is possible? And, so when my mom...
was that received?
No, never.
Kid going, what else is possible? It's like, were you surrounded by people who were like, yes, darling, like this? Or
no, never.
Okay, so then you weren't received as a kid with that energy of what else is possible. So also, how many of you out there listening, had that energy that Brendon's talking about, so fresh and young and vibrant and just like, wow, look at the world, this is amazing. And it's not received. And which I do want to talk a little bit more about in a minute, is the energy of what Brendon was saying is vulnerability is the willingness to receive everything. And I'm not quite sure that people actually get what the hell that even means. So at a young age, when you've got this, like, what else is possible energy and this discovery and this adventure and everything, but nobody is receiving that energy of you, then what next?
Yeah. And that what next? But it's like, if you got, like, even if getting present with yourself now, and if you looked at, like, how many parts and pieces of me were rejected by others that I now reject from myself and don't allow myself the space to choose it because others wouldn't allow me to have it or be it.
And using that as the reason and justification and everything that is, and everything that brings up for you listening to this, where you destroy and uncreate it.
Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all night shorts, boys, men.
That's the access consciousness.
That's the
yep, which you can find out at theclearingstatement.com. So take me back to, you'll be like, well, yeah, let's go. And then, because the story that I love with you teaching yourself to fish, there is a level of presence and trust of yourself and there is the 5 elements of intimacy you seem to have with you.
Well, it was that, but also play. I didn't have in my world that I had to get anything right, or it wasn't about, look at me, I'm catching fish. There was nothing to prove. It was total joy of being me. And, I remember it. It's like my mum and dad had just split up. My mum had moved us into this tiny little apartment with her and my 2 little sisters, my 1 little sister and 1 big sister. And I was 5. I think I was 5 or maybe 6. And, it was right on the river, on the estuary system. And I was like, we basically had to take care of ourselves. My mum was busy trying to make the money to feed us. And so I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to fish, and go down there. And I just like, and you got this kid who's like this tiny little white-haired kid. I can't even remember where I got the bait from, but I probably dug it up out of the ground or something. And then it would be like, and I just like cast my little fishing rod out there, my line out there, and I'd ask the fish to jump on, and I'd just be, talking to them. I always had this closeness and connection with the ocean, and I just catch fish after fish, and was like, yes, it's fun. This is, and people would be like, what is with this kid? I've been here for 2 hours and I haven't caught nothing, but that was not my reality. And that was something I learned at a young age was if I desired something, like I could ask for it. And if I had that joy with it, I could create it. And I must say, I did dynamically give that up over the years.
I'm going to say you did and you didn't.
Yeah, true.
Because I've known you for quite some time. And when you truly desire something and you ask for it, it shows up.
That's a very true story.
Yeah. Yep. Almost to the point that it used to annoy me because I was like, how come Brendon just asks and it shows up? But you had no doubt in your world. You're like, I'm having this. Yeah.
I'm Ferdinand,
Exactly.
Just like the big bull running around in the china shop, just like, look out.
Right. Whereas I'm the goat.
You're the goat. You're the goat. You can cough up anything.
That's what love feels like. So if you don't know what we're referring to the animated movie called Ferdinand, and you must watch it. I don't care if you don't have a kid. You don't need to have a kid to watch it. It's a brilliant movie. And then if you look at it and go, okay, so Brendon is Ferdinand and I'm the goat. Like the goat also coughs up anything. What do you need? What do you need? It's like,
calming goat.
What's that? A calming goat. Exactly.
Do you know they have screaming goats? They have sleeping goats. They have all types. They have show goats. So, you've got a lot of types of goats. If you just thought they were just goats, they're not just goats. There's a lot of
goats. Exactly. So that energy of you, because they can so perceive the energy of the joy, the peace in your world, the time is not relevant, judgment's not relevant. It's just, I'm going to fish. Fish, will you please play with me and jump on my hook? And then you catch lots of fish. So to me, that's such a level of, it is a trust in yourself, like, but not being vested in the outcome, let's say. So how has that been for you? Like, and how can you talk about that in regards to yourself as you've grown older and in creating relationships?
Oh, well, I mean, the first relationship I was in, I basically chose to go into a relationship with somebody thinking that if I could get this girl to love me, then I got this whole thing figured out. And I don't really know where I got that whole point of view from, but I kind of do because it's like I grew up like that. But
when you say this thing figured out, is that life?
Yeah, life, life.
So if this one person, but hang on, this is good because how many people do that? And they go, if I can get this one person who's usually like a judgmental cow or an asshole to love me, then I've got this life figured out. So how many of you have decided that if you get the right relationship, and trust me, have a look at it for yourself. And it's like, I used to always choose men who judged me and my body because it matched the judgments that I had. And it would mean I would never get to choose greater. So how many of you have decided that if you get that right relationship, that person who is actually not kind, who's not willing to function from the 5 elements of intimacy with themselves, never, not you, definitely, but you've decided, oh, if I get this, then I'll have everything figured out. So what if every single thing you've ever been told about vulnerability, about relationships, about choosing, you found out was a lie? And everything that is, will you now please, just for the sheer fun and joy of it, destroy and uncreate everything that is so that you can have this brand new slate and start again. And everything that is times a godzillion where you destroy and uncreate it.
Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 9 shorts, boys and beyonds. But basically, it always came from this trying to get somebody else to see it in themselves would prove to me something. And it was like, it was such a weird thing because it was like, if I can get this person to love me, then I can love myself. And it's like, but if you look at that energy, and that's what I did with this first relationship, this was not that kid's reality. So that span of years between the 6-year-old and the 19, 20-year-old, that 13, 14 years was the development of judgment. And it's like, so over the years, because you look at it and it's like you pinpoint different choices, but if you look at it, it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. It gathers mass and it gathers momentum. And then all of a sudden you go, Jesus, how did it get that big? Well, the same thing we do with our lives. You buy one point of view, one judgment, which takes 25 other judgments to hold that judgment in place, which takes another 25 for each judgment to hold that in place. Before you know it, your life is basically, you've destroyed you, created an image of yourself to maintain some judgment that you've bought from where? What?
Yeah, I love that, Brendon, that analogy too, because I personally so get that image of this cute little, and you were really blonde too, like this little blonde 5-year-old.
I'm telling you.
Really cute. Yeah. And this 5-year-old with that, and then saying that all these years, and then, so how many of us go to where we are now today and we look around and we go, how did I get so fucked up? And it's like, well, what I would like to invite you to is, what if you're not fucked up? Like, what if you are not as fucked up as you think you are? And what if that 5-year-old that you were and that you be is still there and still very much available, and very much available as a growth, like to exponentialize on that energy? Because to me, I mean, that's what you're here for. That's what I'm here for. It's like we both desire. I mean, that's why we facilitate access consciousness classes all around the world. A lot of it online, but all around the world too. We are starting to get out there and do more live classes. And I know that that's why we, I mean, we wrote a book together. I'll talk about that in a second. And it's like, but facilitating these classes to invite people to not just tap into what was that 5-year-old, to have that almost like as this starting base, because there is something so much greater that is available to all of us. And if we truly became vulnerable with ourselves, we can choose that. And we stop looking at other people as a reference point for our choices. We stop looking at our past as a reference point for our choices. We definitely don't look at our family as a reference point for your choices. It's like, look, I know it sounds so cheesy, but it is. It's like that look within. It's like, what is it that you actually desire to choose as your life? Like, what is it you desire to choose with your relationships, with everyone, from whoever you're having sex and copulation with to your friends? Are you surrounding yourself by people who are honoring of you and you're honoring of them, the people that you work with? Or are you, quote unquote, putting up with the best you can find? Or what if it was time to give up putting up with the best you can find and be that vulnerable that you friggin' leap off that cliff with wings that are so big and find out what's next?
Yeah. Well, and isn't it interesting too, like that thing that you were talking about with, you're not as fucked up as you think you are.
Mm-mm.
So, but we do this thing of creating ourselves as fucked up as our way of keeping the world out, which is our way of not being vulnerable, thinking, you know, this, I'm wrong, I'm terrible, I'm bad. When in actuality, you are far more caring than you've ever acknowledged either. Like for me as a kid, I was extremely, well, I like that I say I was extremely sensitive. I still am. I will cry anything, you know. It's like, don't even get me started on that. I will start, but it's like, but that's just me. That's who I am. And it's like, but I have an immense level of caring that I just did my best to destroy with the judgment. You know, and just go, no, I'm fucked up. I'm this, I'm terrible. I'm evil. Yeah, that's a really good way of me building the walls to keep the world out, which was actually me building the walls to keep myself out. And that's the thing that gets us with the inability or the no choice universe with being vulnerable is where, you know, when you get to a point in your life where you go, where the fuck did I go?
Well, it's interesting too, as you said that, Brendon, because how many, like there's this energy of like you hold judgment has more value than caring.
Yeah.
So again, what of everything, what's that?
I was going to say, it's also understandable. It's knowable in most people's universe. They would see that as knowing because it's predictable, it's determinable, it's comfortable.
Which is funny because it isn't, it isn't.
It like, isn't.
We determine and judge that judgment is predictable, and it's not. It's just, it's heavy. It's got this heaviness to it that it's like this solidity. rather than a lightness of no judgment, a lightness of like generosity of spirit, a lightness of caring, a lightness of kindness. It's like a lightness of truly being a contribution to yourself and the planet and everyone around you. It's got no solidity. It's not recognized in society and this reality. So we don't make that real. So everywhere that you are making the solidity of life more valuable than the lightness of living, where you destroy and uncreate it.
Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. But that, even that you said there, it's not recognized. You know, we would create ourselves as recognizable based on what? Like, you know, so that we can have communication with people, you know, so that I can go and play the tape with the person next door and say, how's the weather and what's up? And, you know, and that same thing, so that somebody else can recognize the image that we've created ourselves as. And it's like, you know, the thing I got to, and I'm still getting to, for me, is it's just not enough. And I see so many people now going, you know what, really? So, like this is where we got to get a little bit honest with ourselves and go, really, like,
yeah,
really enough for me.
Well, and how much do you try and do that? I mean, I love the fact that you said like that, stories, etc., and you try and do that so that you're fit in or people will like you. I mean, most people spend their entire lives trying to be like others or be liked by them. Okay, get that? You spend your life trying to be liked by others or be like them. And there was this woman at the markets the other day. She said to me, I've known her for years, right? Like I've bought her products, and she said something to me, and she goes, oh, have I said that to you before? And I looked at her and I went, so it's like, I didn't really have a point of view, but I was like, God, there's so much more else available than this. And I went, yeah, I said, every time I see you, because she does, she says the same thing to me every single time I see her. And she went, oh, like in this thing. And it was like, well, she just got caught out for her story number 53 that I used for this woman at the markets, you know? And it's like, what if every moment you were so vulnerable with your relationships with everyone, from everyone, like the person you just interact with at a shop, that you it's like reading the room. You read the moment. Do you even have to speak? Or could it be a smile? Or could it be a wink? I don't know. Could it be a wave? Or could it be like a, you know, asking a question of how someone is and just being like, hey, how's it going? And how many people, when they ask, how are you? If you go, not great, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear good. But what if it was time that we became really present with each other and didn't have that dismissal energy, because the vulnerability is being so present with each other that we can handle anything, because we literally can handle anything.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, because you broke that lady's algorithm. You broke her automatic pilot, which is, see, this is the other thing, is like, you would, something like that, there's such a kindness to that also, because she doesn't even know that she's gone into this automatic thing. It's the slow drip system, you know, like Chinese torture. It's like Chinese water torture. Basically, it's a drip to the head until you go insane. And it's like, but us being us is the thing that breaks it. Like when you don't go into that automatic, or, you know, you be the question and you be that kindness for somebody else, and they're like, oh, wow, like that gives me more of a sense of me.
Can I just give you a little bit of a fun fact? You know, Chinese water torture? Do you know who it was created by?
Not the Chinese.
Italians.
Well, that's interesting. That's even like, you know, pizza was created by, I think it was the Americans or something. I don't know. It was something else.
No, original pizza in Italy never had tomato sauce, like any sort of tomato thing. The Americans introduced that to the Italians.
There you go. Americans.
There you go. America. And Italians created Chinese torture.
Yeah, so I'm like, I've met, oh, too many things that I will not say on a podcast recorded.
Do it. So,
but this topic of vulnerability and all of it is like imagine like living from the space of, you don't have to lie to yourself anymore.
You don't have to lie to yourself anymore. What would that be like? So I'm going to give you some home play if you're listening to this. I'd like you to write down at least 5 to 10 things. You can do old school, pen and paper, or on your phone, or whatever it is.
Old school is my choice. I got my notepads.
Excellent. Oh, look at you and your little yellow. I love those notepads.
Oh, they're all over the house.
I know. They're very, so write down 5 to 10 things that you could choose that you're not choosing, that if you never lied to yourself again, would create the ease of choosing it. Does that make sense? 5 places where you're lying to yourself, basically. And then if you stop lying to yourself, ask, would my life be greater? You know, and also, what awareness did I gain from this? I mean, everything you've chosen has gotten you where you are today. And what is it that you would like to choose now? Like, what level of vulnerability are you willing to be with yourself that you could choose greater at every single moment? Which, ladies and gentlemen, means that you've got to not function from the rightness of your point of view, because you being right is never going to create something greater. And trust me, I know this. Brendon knows this. It's like we've went down that road for you, okay? And it's like, it's not a pretty road. It's like the rightness of your point of view, the righteousness, the conclusion. I mean, that was I was talking to Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, the other day, and I was sort of a bit like, what? And he said, you're letting go of some of your limitations. He said, you've actually stopped concluding. And to me, it was like this, not even a rocky road. It was like, I have no idea what's next. And what if it's okay to have no idea what's next? What if that is your biggest gift that you could give to yourself?
Yeah, true story. Yep.
So is there anything else that you would like to add here, Brendon? I mean, I know there's a zillion things with vulnerability, with yourself, with your relationships, etc. Let's briefly talk about what are some of the questions or hints or tools you could give people to start being vulnerable with relationships that they have.
Well, I would say start it with yourself. Like, truly start creating that vulnerability with yourself and start asking for even what energy, space, consciousness, choice, magic, miracles, mysteries, and possibilities can I be to perceive? Is that mine? Being, yeah. To perceive, know, be, and receive the gift and the difference I came here to be for all eternity with total ease. And everything that doesn't allow that, times a godzillion, we destroy and uncreate it.
Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds.
I don't even know what's dinging. I closed everything.
It sounds like emails.
Well, there you go.
There you go. So, and I'm going to do a little thing here too. If you're on YouTube, you can see the picture I'm putting up here. But it's a book that Brendon and I actually co-authored together, and it's called Relationship. Are you sure you want one? And I love that we put this into a question. And if you don't already know this, it's got some brilliant tools in there for creating a great relationship. And just as we launched this book, we actually broke the relationship up, and it's really not relevant in a sense of these tools are amazing. And we've got tools in there too, that if you having that relationship with yourself, you don't need to be in a relationship to use this book. It's like, if you're alive and you've got blood running through your veins, you're in a relationship because you're in a relationship with you. So, and there's some really cool, vulnerable, fun stories that we have in there as well. So check that out on all your good book buying places. And you can also go to relationship.areyousureyouwantone.com. We also have a class coming up, Brendon, in March, and it's during Global Foundation, which Global Foundation is a massive class that Gary Douglas and Dane here do. It's actually going to be live in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, and it'll be online as well. So the only prerequisite to that is a bars class, which Brendon is also doing a bars class just prior to that. So you can check out those classes on accessconsciousness.com. If you search Brendon Watt, you'll find his bars class. And if you search Gary Douglas, I'm sure they're on the front page at the moment, Dr. Dane here, you'll have the Global Foundation. During that, on the second night, we're actually doing a class, and it's called Where Are You Defined by Relationship? So Brendon and I will be doing just an evening small class. If you're going to Global Foundation, it's actually free. If not, it's a minimal cost. Not like a small class. I meant like hour-wise. It's like an hour.
It's going to be like not this big, but this big.
It's going to be huge class, but in the span of an hour, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So if you want to join that, you can check out that as well. You can find that on accessconsciousness.com. Okay, so anything else? What can I ask you?
Mhm.
What is something that you have acknowledged recently in yourself that you've changed that is created something greater?
I would say, for me, I'm beginning to see the contribution that I actually am. Like, and I'm just starting to step into that, because what I realize, see, the thing for me is that judgment, it short circuits the contribution. So you would go, I really want to be more of a contribution, but I'm not being enough of a contribution, and I'm not being enough. So for me, as soon as I go to that judgment, I was just short circuiting everything. And so it's like, it's starting to really get that kindness with myself and go, you know what, I'm going to just take some space and start creating. If I was creating my life from reset right now, what would I create myself as? And from that space, like, and if you live from that, like, and you go, truly every day is a new day, because we've all fucked a lot of shit up. We just have. So it's one thing to be unkind to yourself about your past, or it's another to go, you know what have I learned from it? How have I grown because of it?
Yeah, what awareness have I gained?
Yeah. And then it's like, and now, you know what? Reset. And if you've got children, that makes it difficult, because you still keep your children. I've got one. But it's like, damn it, reset. No, I'm kidding. I love him.
Actually, it does work though, reset, because he's changed so much over the years. So he is doing reset all the time too. So yeah. And what I've noticed, to tell you the truth, is you reset, he resets, because when you reset, he's got nothing to define his relationship with you based on you resetting. Like, I love it when my friends reset, including you, because you're like, whoa, okay, where am I? Who am I? And it's like that, who am I today? And what grand and glorious adventures can I have? Let's go.
And can I just add to that and say, when you reset, the world resets. And that right there that's where you start to really go, holy shit, I could be that kind of contribution. Yeah, well, you do. You change one thing in your life, and you go beyond one limitation. You choose to be more of you. Our world changes. And that is literally, okay, so you can look at that as, no, it doesn't. It's an actual fact, because you've changed. You changing one thing, how does that keep the world the same as it is?
And if you even look at come out of judgment.
So you're going to say come out of the closet. I was like, well, that's my next thing.
Whoa, easy, Tiger. No, if you come out of judgment and you choose like play, joy, consciousness, it permeates across the world.
It does. True story. Yep.
And that'll be another episode where you'll see, does Brendon choose to come out of the closet or not, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to start to spread a rumor now. That's how it starts.
Well, there's plenty of rumors out there going around about me anyway, so it's fine.
Anyway, thank you so much, Brendon, for coming on here. I'm super grateful, and I get to see you very soon in March in Mexico.
Yes. I apologize about my
That's no worries. Okay. All right. So stay on for 1 second, Brendon. But to all of you out there watching or listening, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the world soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button on your favorite listening platform to get notified of new episodes. We read all the reviews, so if there's any topic you would like to hear about, let us know. If you'd like to know more about the tools, information, and classes mentioned in the podcast, head on over to SimoneMilasas.com and follow me on Instagram at Simone Milasas, or the podcast has its very own link on Instagram at Choice, Change, and Action. Don't forget, you can download the show notes. And lastly, have way too much fun today.